The research that I'm going to talk about today, or the device that I'm talking about today, is a project that I've been working on for several years with my colleague Brian Otis. The project itself is to develop a special kind of tag technology to put on birds and monitor their behavior and their interactions. And so before I get into the technology, I just sort of wanted to introduce me and talk about the particular problems that this device is intended to solve. And the reason why I'm saying that is because this project is very kind of results-driven, if you will. We started out with a problem and working with I came up with a general idea for a solution, and Brian and I worked together to come up with a very specific, concrete project. As for myself, I'm actually an animal behavior. So my confession is that I'm not an engineer, although sometimes I act like one. I hooked up with Brian Otis, who runs the wireless sensing lab at the University of Washington. And he specializes in making very small things that transmit radio energy with very low power and have good sensors on them. So it was a great matchup. So for the rest of this talk, I'm going to introduce you first to just sort of the question or the problem that we were trying to solve, and then I'll talk about the solution that we got to. Okay, so animals, the majority of animals interact with other members of their species, at least on an occasional basis. And most animals, in fact, very frequently interact with other members of their species in groups or dyads and so on. So animals are essentially social, and they have societies. And because social behavior is so important to animals and is such an integral part of their lives, people who study animal behavior really spend a lot of their time studying social and society and social influences on behavior. One of the useful tools for analyzing social behavior is this concept of social networks, which comes out of human sociology theory. And the idea is that if you have a group of individuals, the individuals have some kind of set of connections between one another. So, for example, in elephant societies, there's always a matriarch, and she's the dominant or the highest status individual in the group. And she actually turns out to be very, very important to all of the elephants in the group. If, for example, so she's a centrally located individual in a network. The ties between individuals indicate associations or affiliation. And you can actually, in social network theory, you can ascribe all kinds of different meanings to the ties, but they're basically connections between individuals. So in the case of an elephant society, the matriarch is essentially the center of the group. And if, for example, she is killed by poachers, the group cohesiveness is destroyed or at least damaged very badly. And it has enormous consequences to elephants in particular when this kind of thing happens, because the matriarch, oftentimes is the repository of knowledge and information, and they lose that. So it's very, very important, and the structure of the society of a particular species is also important. Okay, so let's get to specifics. I'm going to talk about briefly to sort of introduce you to the species that I study, song sparrows. And for the last few years, I've been working with Michael Beecher in the psychology department to study song learning, and particularly the social aspects of and social influence on song learning. So to get you into this, I have to explain a little bit about the life history of these guys. Song sparrows sing about 7 or 8 different song types that are unique, and they learn all of the songs that they sing in the first year of their life. And there's an interesting aspect of this. So let me just sort of take you through how this goes. In the late spring, they hatch, and they grow up rather quickly, and they disperse from their parents' territory. And then during the summer, they're kind of cruising around in the neighborhood, and they sort of float. During that time, they're acquiring songs. They're memorizing the songs that they're going to sing later, but they don't sing. They're completely quiet. So they're absorbing songs like a sponge. Then during the fall and the winter, they begin to practice, and they begin to learn how to sing. And they are practicing the songs that they've picked up earlier, but there's a process of selection that goes on during this phase as well. And then during the springtime of the next year, they become territorial, so they start to defend a space, and they start to sing. So the question that we've been asking is, how do birds choose the songs that they eventually learn to sing? It turns out, for example, that the songs that a bird sings as an adult is very important. So the selection of songs is not random. They tend to sing the same songs that their neighbors sing. So how is it that a young bird who's learning songs, is absorbing songs, knows who his neighbors are going to be? And it kind of implies that there's a social effect, or there's some kind of strategy going on. So the question we ask, and this is based on some hints that we've seen in what's going on out there, is there some kind of a social influence on learning? And so briefly, the idea here is that we have a young bird, he's cruising around, he's got all these adult birds that he can choose to listen to and learn his songs from. Maybe he's paying attention to interactions that are happening between specific individuals, and that those interactions are influencing his choices for what song to sing. But then the question becomes, how do we monitor this stuff? In order to find out what's going on, we have to somehow know where this guy is, who, on a continuous basis, who he's spending time with, so in other words, who he's listening to. We want to know what's going on between these guys, and we need to do this for a whole year, so we got to somehow be monitoring this fellow for an entire year so that we can then find out where his territory is and what he chose to sing after all that. And then we have to kind of multiply that by a large number of research subjects. Young song sparrows have a very high mortality rate, so you have to have a lot of subjects. So now we're talking about quite a difficult problem that needs to be solved. So I came up with a solution which turns out had already been thought up. Of course, there's nothing new, especially when we have places like MIT around. And the idea is to use an encounter logger. And what an encounter logger is it's a device that goes on the animal, and you put a device on one animal, you put a device on another animal, and if those two animals come near each other, then each device logs the presence of the other individual. Typically, they store the time and the duration of the encounter along with the individual ID. Encounter loggers oftentimes have various sensing capabilities. So they have GPS or accelerometers, microphones, and so on. So the basic idea was to we have a bunch of birds out in the field. We put some tags on them, these encounter monitors. We monitor their interactions with each other. The tags store or log information about encounters. This information gets stored as a log, and somehow we're able to download this information off the bird, whether we recapture the bird or use some kind of wireless method to suck it off of them. And then we can take these encounter data and generate some kind of a social network graph or do other kinds of analyses on what they're doing and answer some of the questions that we have. Okay, so what's out there now? Well, it turns out that a number of people have tried this. There's a project called ZebraNet at Princeton where they actually built something almost entirely like what my idea was, except for they put it on zebras. It's quite a large device. I don't think that would fit on a bird. We have a device that's just come out. It's actually a commercially available device by a New Zealand guy called the SurTrack Proximity Logger. Some people have recently deployed this on raccoons. So it's getting a little bit smaller. And then, of course, we have the Uber badge, which I can't get away without mentioning. And in fact, the Uber badge was very much of an inspiration to me. The idea of a project where you build this thing and then you make the information about how to build it available on the internet so that anyone can use it. I really like that idea, and so I've kind of incorporated that into our project. So to get this thing on a bird, we're talking about a couple of orders of magnitude lower power and smaller size. So we need to get whatever device goes on the bird. It's got to be less than or equal to about 1 gram in weight, and it can't be more than about a square centimeter. We're talking about devices that have a very long or indefinite lifespan. So we want to get into energy harvesting. And one of the things that I added to this specification list is that I want this to be flexible, or at least I want some of the devices we build to be flexible. And the reason why is because everybody who does research in animals has a completely different or has a slightly different need for what they want to do. And if we want to make this available to as many people as possible, this thing has to be able to be reconfigured to operate in different ways. And we want it to be autonomous. So we don't want to have to go out and recatch the animal to get the data off of it. We want this thing to collect the data and store it all by itself in a way that we can easily access it. And it's got to be cheap enough that people can actually afford to use it. So the idea that I came up with, I call it EncounterNet. And the notion is, let me just do a little setup here. Let's just say we have a song sparrow neighborhood. So it's a stylized song sparrow neighborhood. We have some adults here. These are territories. So song sparrows are exclusive. They don't let any other birds into their territory. So we have these 3 guys here. We have some kind of an open field here. And then we have some other territorial adults here. Then we have some young birds that are kind of cruising around and sampling the songs in the neighborhood. So these are the yellow guys. The idea is that we put what I call roving nodes on each of the birds. So these are tags that monitor associations. And then we put these collection base stations out. The base stations then automatically communicate with the roving nodes and acquire the data from the roving nodes. So this whole system can be operating outside without us managing it, and data is coming off of the birds, association or interaction data is coming off of the birds and into these base stations. Then we can go and get them. So the main question is who are the young guys spending time next to? But we also need to know what the adults are doing and where they are, and we can actually use signal strength data on node values received in order to get a very rough estimate of the positions of individuals. We also want to know what's going on among the young birds who tend to fly in little flocks and associate with specific individuals. And note that we can collect these data away from the base station, so the birds can go off the map, so to speak, and come back and upload their data. So in the first iteration of EncounterNet, the system that we're going to be using this year and next year, it's going to be a fairly simple system. Tags essentially talk to each other and share information. Base station, data gets uploaded to a base station, and then we come by with a PDA and get the data off of each of the base stations. The system that we envision will be a little more sophisticated. The idea is to have a mesh network layer at the base station level so that data flows to a particular node, central base station node. We use a cellular modem to send the data. Now, of course, we can also send commands down to the network, and in fact, commands can percolate down to the tags if we want to change conditions. Parameters. So this is the current generation of our tag. We've designed it, built it, we're testing it, we're working on the firmware right now. We had some bugs, otherwise I would have brought a demonstration. It's 15 millimeters by 7 millimeters. It uses all off-the-shelf components. These are all very low power components. We want to get to about a microwatt in total power consumption, average power consumption. We're probably not going to get there. And a weight of about 1 gram. We can't get much higher than 1 gram, otherwise you can't safely put it on a bird. It's too heavy for them. And we'll be operating this generation using either batteries and or solar power. We'd really like to get the system going, at least in a very, very low power version of it. That's using solar power so that we can have very, very long-term deployments. This device here, this first generation, has sensor capabilities. So it has the MSP430 processor has A to D converters on it, and we're designing it so that it's going to have sort of a plug-and-play capability for daughter boards that we can put on that can, for example, have a microphone amplifier or an accelerometer. Accelerometers are very interesting to me because they have the potential to measure behaviors in a kind of real-time sense. So it'd be really nice to be able to correlate accelerometer-based behavior classifications with associations between individuals. And it's a very flexible, it's reprogrammable. We're hoping we can do over-the-air programming of the firmware so that even while it's on the bird, we can actually reprogram the firmware. The next generation is what Brian is going to be working on starting this year and next year, and that is a complete system on a chip, a single chip device. Using very low power, much lower power radio design, and it won't be as flexible, as the first generation device, but it will have much better chances of being able to operate for indefinitely using energy harvesting, and it will be much smaller and lighter. In fact, it'll be so small and light. I mean, we're estimating that, well, this isn't quite right. We're estimating that it'll be about 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters, but that's just an estimate of what the chip size will be. And then there'll be some discretes for that that come on for the battery and stuff. So where we are now is we're working on the Generation 1 tags. We're doing a lot of testing and kind of debugging of the software. And we're working on an attempt at getting a solar energy harvesting board working on it. And by late 2009, we're hoping that we can actually do some deployments with birds, just sort of test deployments. And then in 2010, we'll be actually testing it in real experimental work with collaborators. And we'll begin to work on the Generation 2. And I just wanted to thank the undergrads who have worked very hard on this and my future collaborators in the field. Thank you.